My friend, thanks for coming back to my channel. It was for a while silent. It's 2024. I wish you all the best for the new year, and I decided to start this new session, new series on typical practical tips for you to analyze a company from a cybersecurity perspective, trying to identify common attack vector and explain you a bit better what sometimes the jargon of the cybersecurity dictionary hide between the line, where, especially in risk evaluation, security architecture choice, and CISO strategies. I do this one with the same intent that few years ago. If you look at my channel, I have tons of video trying to help a security professional on seeing some of the hidden risk in highly technical topics, and I try to simplify in the best manner that I can. You have still a video on security architecture, an entire course that you can take for free on my YouTube. You do have a lot of resources on analyzing the maturity of an infrastructure security program. So let's start with Red Pill series. It means is just a flashy title to explain that I'm going to explain a practical problem that are common across companies. So you'll find in any company VPN services, and this first episode of this Red Pill series will be about VPN. So there is common to establish VPN to secure assets that are connecting to the network, to the infrastructure, but we all know how there was a change, a shift towards a more practical and more reasonable approach, like zero trust design, that at the end are most of the time implementing VPN SSL. So hidden by the marketing of various terms, underneath there is always a proxy service somewhere in cloud, local, that parse your request and reroute those across the internet, trying to secure the clients. Now, most of the time you are looking at the remote services in terms of techniques on how they got exploited. They are really independent from the platform. You can run these services also mobile. I give you an example of some exploitation of remote services, for example, in Android and iOS with a lateral move. Now let's recap for a second how many incidents happen over and over again across VPN, and you'll see that they are always trying to get a foothold on the client side or allow call to private network behind the VPN service, or you'll find vulnerabilities on the VPN endpoint and concentrator, and you'll see how this structure is anyway quite easy to be adapted to a multitude of IT and OT infrastructure. Right now, let's try to see what is the hidden risk into the terminology. VPN is associated with a security that sometimes is a bit too vague. So we do know that there are various types of VPN. VPN can be IPsec, the typical IPsec tunnel, and they can be SSL. Difference is the forwarding of the ports. An IPsec tunnel is established on a 500 UDP. Sometimes use also the 4500 for the NAT traversal, and is establishing a point-to-point, but a point-to-point that connect to networks. That's the summary. The IPsec need a client, an IPsec client, and most of the time can be used also through routing. And so you connect to something, it does have a VPN. Also, if you don't have a direct client establishing that endpoint connectivity, your traffic gets routed. Now, one of the main issue that you are having is at the time that you cross these VPN services, sometimes you do have NAT, so your IP address get NATed. This one is one of the small technical points that people don't think about at the time that there is later on an incident. If your traffic is completely NATed, when you are investigating an attack into your company, you'll always find as a source IP the NATed IP. The NAT table is and the full log of all connectivity is quite difficult to be investigated. So when you are talking about a VPN, don't consider only the security of a tunnel from an external in terms of cryptography, but also how the design is, and if it does include a NAT, and if you are always capable to reverse the investigation. This one is a common issue across the industry. You'll find a lot of lateral move, and the attacker hide their lateral move because uh, legitimate users or the attacker are anyway both NATed, and they are all connecting to the same services. So consider that as the first point on a first hidden risk in VPN. You do have guideline from NIS and many others on how a VPN should be secured. So in this talk, I'm not going to explain you all cryptography, all issue with phase 1, phase 2 of the VPN IPsec. I'm going to tell you hidden risk. So first, as I told you, the NAT traversal or not. Does he use a NAT? Are you capable to see which client? Do you assign a client IP that is unique? Is your certificate filtering all requests? And so do you provide a certificate for the SSL inspection too? Because sometimes it can happen that you are having a VPN, you don't consider these points, and you are having serious gaps. Another issue that you find between the definition of VPN, VPN can be established in various ways. It can be a VPN as as mandatory tunnel, and so all traffic get tunneled into the VPN, or can be used VPN splitting. VPN splitting is a big issue because it means that at the same time you are bridging split tunneling is anyway bridging the private network behind the VPN service with whatever the client can access at the same time. This one is extremely dangerous with client malware because at the time that you establish the VPN, you can still surf the internet through your local connectivity, so your Wi-Fi network and whatever, and not all traffic get redirected to the company. So this one was one of the architecture issue that always made VPN a risk term. It's difficult to talk about VPN without understanding if it's IPsec, if it's SSL, do you do split tunneling or not. Now, keep in mind that each introduce a risk, but at the time that you use split VPN, you do bridge your network. You can have problem of compliance. You can have a problem of logging because you don't have all requests of endpoint. Sometimes these VPN get used also with third parties. That's the reason why a jump box is always the way to go, even if you have a VPN. Now, if you are listening, you are thinking about CASB, a most modern solution, you say VPN is the past, forget about it. Whatever you access on-prem is probably having some connectivity that is tunnel-based. Even a point-to-point MPLS within the company is a lateral move point. So even if it doesn't use a VPN, you'll find those more often. Another issue that you'll have day by day is all these new cloud services in somehow this migration to cloud services force company to use things like VPN peering, express route, dedicated link to the cloud service. You need to consider how your network is connecting through that, and you have the same problem that I just mentioned, the NATing, which logs you have, do you have a proxy, and consider that some of this design, even from the service provider, don't force to have a DMZ. So you have a private network connecting through public tunneling, landing directly in another network that is supposed to be private on the cloud services. In the cloud services, because within the same cloud service provider, you can have multiple services, okay? That means you can have infrastructure as a service, or a Kubernetes clusters, whatever you use within that. Now, the issue that you are having there is not going to change from what I describe. Always think what you can see in case of an incident, how you understand the lateral move, how you parse the data that get moved from one to another one, and how you manage also the DNS. DNS tunneling is one of the main techniques that get used by attackers because it works. And I'm in the field for almost 2 decades, and DNS tunneling always work in any kind of cloud service. The VPN, the DNS is always open. So you need to look at this service and these capabilities to inspect the traffic to understand if it is real DNS traffic, and DNS security is a big portion of a picture. VPN SSL gave a lot of flexibility that everybody considered to be a trade-off between usability and security. You can tunnel in a VPN SSL also different port, and you'll need anyway an agent or something forwarding that on the client side. But you'll find that most of this tunneling is unparsed. That's because on the other end, the VPN SSL concentrator that you are using wasn't designed and supposed to look for all traffic that you are tunneling there. So a lot of solutions out there are capable to do inspection of that tunnel if it's not configured with something like an SSH passing through the SSL and just retunnel it. That's another big issue. You'll find sometimes also SSH proxy in the firewall for VPN, and those are obviously exposing one server, but they are using a double hop straight into the internal. That is another risk that you need to consider when you implement SSH double hopping. So SSH include the double hop, so you can SSH to a bastion host, and from that jump to another host inside. But you need to understand which capabilities you have to lock those commands you do have use. working concept. A DMZ too. So the problem with all these cloud service provider offering design like express route straight away without any DMZ is that there is no actual control in case of an incident. Consider that if you do connect some base on through base something, you have an connectivity, and the capability. A good design is a design that is also capable. Cruise does if by mistake one section of a cruise is having water in. They silo that chunk and they keep going to avoid to sink. That is the same concept that you need to apply to your infrastructure. From an auditing perspective, you find a lot of attention on what's the encryption of a VPN now is done and established, but absolutely zero on logging accountability to understand who initiated that connectivity. And it's not rare to have some certificate management problem. So I'm not saying that you have for sure this problem, but those are the most common. To be solid, the vendor are giving you solutions that are built in with their certificate. In a supply chain attack where, for example, the certificate of a vendor is compromised, risk to impact you badly. We do have example in the past of problem, for example, we know some case study on Citrix VPN or many other. I don't want to shame one because bug and zero day happen to everybody. The problem is that you'll have and you'll see this pattern repeating over and over. So look at your IAM and your client certificate. If you talk about a zero trust, obviously you need to. So the problem is the vendor claim that the certificate is not exportable, but you can do it because you do know hacking and you do know that you can export it. You do risk to have a false sense of security. That is one of the worst things that you can have. Remember, this scenario that I describe is extremely common also in SD-WAN. New deployment on SD-WAN are not more advanced in terms of how they work in terms of tunnels, and they add a complexity and a functionality to be at layer 7 and having a proxy. But this one doesn't change the fact that you do risk to have VPN and lateral move across an SD-WAN fabric and not be capable to understand from which side the attacker is poking you. Okay? Now, comment below. Let me know which kind of question you have, and I will try to keep this appointment weekly or bi-weekly, and I will try to create more content for you. I'm still committed to focus on security architecture, but there is nothing in security architecture that is not directly linked to CISO strategy or risk evaluation. Most of the time, you see people talking about VPN and not extrapolating what's the real VPN configuration. That is a common issue in threat modeling because if you do it too abstract only on the concept, you'll not see the real attack surface. Now consider that you have also legal problem. You do have countries like China where if you establish VPN, you do have a certain kind of requirements, and it's really huge as a topic, but I consider sometimes this issue not fully explored or not fully understood. So lateral and other connectivity, but most of organization you'll find that VPN are heavily used. On the client side, even a CASB or where you have a VPN SSL of a cloud access broker, it's nothing different because you'll find that this solution use their certificate authority and they don't allow to use your own, or many of the implementation don't consider to use their own certificate for the complexity of the certificate management. So consider all these points all together and understand that also these solutions sometimes can be really expensive from a SOC perspective in terms of logs and verbosity. So whatever trade-off you are looking for in terms of storage of all these logs means a new risk that you introduce at the time you have an incident to not understand from where the attacker passed through or exfiltrate data. So keep up. When you see a VPN, ask yourself some questions. DNS is a big topic. At the time that you pass through a VPN endpoint, the DNS, you need to understand who does the DNS resolution. Is a DNS resolution secured in somehow? Do you recognize that is really DNS and is not tunneling? Keep in mind this question and please give me feedback. I'm looking for that. I'm trying to make my content better. I know that is not too fancy and flashy from a video editing perspective, but I do to keep it simple, also for me to release more content instead of spending the hour editing that. Uh, you can contact me at any time. Just leave a comment and I will be happy to connect and trying to understand how I can help you. Okay? Thanks a lot for your time listening and see you the next episode.